God has called us, commissioned us, and commanded us to reach our neighbors with the message and love of Christ, and it all begins with getting to know your neighbors. But how? We're working our way through a simple acronym, START. This is a great way to remember what we need to do to make an eternal difference in the lives of our neighbors and intentionally live the purpose that Christ created us for. S is start with prayer. T, talk with them. A, ask them to a meal. R, reach out with service. And T, tell your story. The first and most important thing we must do is start with prayer. Remember, prayer is powerful, and if we genuinely and consistently begin praying for our neighbors, we can expect God to act. He will open up opportunities to meet our neighbors, and God will use us to make an impact. Next, we need to talk with them about their story. We can never assume that we know the needs of our neighbors or neighborhood until we've talked with our neighbors. But here's the key. We must learn to ask good questions, close our mouths, open our ears, and listen. Because if you listen, our neighbors will tell us how to reach, serve, and care for them. The A stands for ask them to a meal. Again, so simple, but we must be intentional. If I asked you to think about what Jesus did during His time on earth, what would come to your mind? Maybe His teaching or healing, His miracles, His praying, walking on water, or His crucifixion. But do you realize that many of the greatest Jesus stories from the Bible were centered around a table and sharing a meal? Jesus calls Matthew as one of His disciples, and Matthew invites everyone to dinner. This is where Jesus sets Himself apart by being willing to eat with those far from God. Now, Jesus invites Himself to dinner at the home of Zacchaeus, a cheat who was despised by his neighbors. But through the dinner conversation, Jesus changes the entire course of Zacchaeus' life. Remember the story of Mary, who anoints Jesus' feet with her hair and in doing so predicts His coming death. This all happens at dinner at the home of Lazarus, the man Jesus raised from the dead. And most of us remember the story of the Last Supper with His disciples around a table for a meal. These are just a few examples. Eating and sharing a meal with someone in Jesus' day was a big deal. It made a statement that you wanted to be associated with the people with whom you were eating. It was an affirmation of their value and their worth. Who you ate with demonstrated who you cared about. Eating for Jesus was more than meeting a physical need of hunger. Jesus ate with a mission and a purpose. He was building relationships and changing lives one meal at a time. God has called us, commissioned us, and commanded us to reach our neighbors with the message and love of Christ, and it all begins with getting to know them. But where do you start? Let me offer a few ideas. Keep it simple. We're not talking about serving a 5-course meal. Do a barbecue. Men really like this. You don't have to always eat in your home. Go out. If you don't want to cook or don't have time to cook, order in. Pizza is simple, but for the right guests, it's all you need. If every Christian household regularly invited unchurched neighbors into their home for a meal just once a month, we would have a huge impact in our neighborhoods in this valley.
As I stated this past weekend at church, the theme for 2013 for CCV is Step Up. How can all of us grow and go to the next level? You know, if you think about your life, how many times have you told your kids in school today, I just want you to be average? Or in sports or anything they're involved in, kids just go out today and be average. No, we challenge our children to step up, to do the best that they can in every area of their life. And that's the same challenge I want to give to you in the church as well. In the early church, in the book of Acts, people had to step up. In fact, it says in Acts 2, verse 14, on the day of Pentecost, then Peter stood up with the 11 and raised his voice and addressed the crowd. You see, Jesus had just been killed. Their leader was gone. And so they had two choices. Were they going to stay together and cower in fear, or were they going to step up and put their lives on the line for Jesus Christ? And so the early church began to grow rapidly because Peter and the disciples were willing to step up. You know, the same thing is true as we began CCV in a movie theater with no money. There were a lot of people that said, we'll step up. What do you want us to do? We will do whatever it takes. And the truth is, over the 30-year history of our church continues to make a difference because many of you have said, what do you need me to do? I will step up. I will go to the next level. I will be more than average in my spiritual growth. So as you meet today in your groups, I want to begin first of all by asking you this question. Would you share one time, maybe in your life, when you had to step up? Maybe it was volunteer to be a youth coach. Maybe it was to do something in your children's school. Maybe it was a place at work. Some situation where you were challenged to not just be average, but you were challenged to step up. I want us to look a little closer at the 4 areas I shared this weekend where we need to step up and go to the next level in our spiritual growth. S stands for serve in ministry. And one reason God continues to bless our church on all 3 campuses is because of the people that are already serving. But as we're growing and adding new people, we always need more people to step up and find responsibilities and tasks where they can help us make a difference. It could be working in the parking lot. It could be teaching 3rd grade. Or whether you know it or not, a lot of people come every week and they volunteer in the office. Or a lot of people come during the week and they help the maintenance and grounds crew. There are all kinds of things that you can do to help us serve and step up and go to the next level. The T stands for tithe. That means we give the first 10% of our resources to the Lord. Everything we have is from God. We don't own anything. We're simply managers. And so maybe the challenge would be for you to step up and say, I'm going to begin to trust God with the first 10% of everything that I have. You've heard it said, 90% with God goes farther than 100% without God. And sometimes this area of finances is one of the toughest areas for us to trust God and step up. So maybe you would say, this is the area that I'm really going to step up and make a difference this year. The E stands for evangelize consistently. If we're going to impact our neighbors, if we're going to make a difference where we live and where we work, we've got to consistently every day pray for opportunities. And when we pray for opportunities, God's going to open the door. And when He opens the door, let's be willing to walk through those. So when you think of the card that you have and the names on that card, look at those every day and say, Lord, help me reach one of these for Jesus Christ this year. The P stands for participate in worship and neighborhood group. Statistics say that people come to church, or a lot of them go to group, only 2 out of 4 times a month. And if we went to work 2 out of 5 days, we would lose our job. If our kids went to school 2 out of 5 days, they would fail. And so as we think about our participation in worship on the weekend or in neighborhood groups, let's make a decision that we're going to step it up and try to go consistently on a weekly basis, and we're going to participate in worship, or we're going to step up for the first time and participate in a neighborhood group. If we do these 4 things, if we serve, if we tithe, if we evangelize consistently, if we participate in worship and our neighborhood groups, then we will reach up unlimited potential. You will grow spiritually, and our church will be able to make a difference in this community for Jesus Christ. Now, as we look together at the 4 challenges that I've just shared, in your group, I want you to discuss these 2 questions. The first is, which one of these 4 are you already doing? Second question is, which area are you going to step up in 2013 and say, you know what? I'm going to do a little more. I'm going to add this to my commitment because I want to be a fully devoted follower of Jesus Christ. Would you take time to discuss those 2 questions together? As your pastor, I want to say to you, thanks for what you're already doing. Thanks for all of you that have stepped up and continue to step up to make our ministry significant. A special thanks to those of you that are leading neighborhood groups, those of you that are hosting neighborhood groups. It's people like you that are really helping us step up and make a difference. Maybe your group is growing. Maybe your group is already pretty large. The house is full. And maybe this year, some of you in the group that are listening to what I'm saying, maybe God's going to say to you, why don't you step up and host a new group? Why don't you step up and lead a new group so that we can reach more of our neighbors for Jesus Christ? Again, thanks for what you're doing. This is going to be a great year. All of us can have unlimited potential. Our church can have unlimited potential as we all step up.